Welcome to Three Cops Talk. On this podcast, three active duty police officers discuss behind-the-scenes stories and real-life accounts of what it's like to be a cop. Every episode, you'll get an inside look at the challenges and dangers they face on a daily basis, as well as the triumphs and inspirational moments that make it all worth it. If you want to understand more about the men and women who put their lives on the line for us every day, then this is the show for you. And now your hosts, Chris, Scott, and Sean.
Welcome back. We're going to do a real quick hit show here today. This is Sean from Three Cops Talk. I am joined yet again by the Polish Fog from down in Florida, rich Uncle Chris, and the thrifty Norwegian is with us from Illinois, Big Sergeant Scott.
Yeah.
Just again, get right to it. The banter today is going to be about the news, big things going on. The President of the United States had a search warrant served on his home, and people are really confused about it. The talking heads, and your social media as well are really confused about what warrants are about. And police operate in that world all the time. And again, it's yet another thing that when you hear this as a cop, you're like, what are these people talking about?
Right.
We got to realize that most people don't take criminal justice classes. Most people don't wade into this on the level that we do. Unfortunately for us, Chris,
yes,
we've got a resident expert with us.
Yes, a SME, as they say.
A SME in this. And that's the Big Sergeant Scott, who, if you guys don't know his backstory here a little bit, I know we've talked about this before on previous shows, that he was what we call a TFO, which was a task force officer. He was assigned to the DEA. And he worked that for years, and that gave him access to both the federal and the local criminal justice, state level, local level, county level criminal justice process. So he's going to be our guy talking to us and leading us through, the warrant process. A lot of people just think, like the cops, like we think up, hey, I want to get a warrant on somebody's home. This high level of intrusion of privacy and expectation of privacy, and some of the things that go about. And people confuse oftentimes arrest warrants with search warrants, and how on the criminal justice side of that is really maligned like everything else. And in some ways people say the criminal justice system is being weaponized without really knowing what's going on.
Right.
And Scott's going to take us through it. So, Chris, you got anything to add here on the front end?
No, I just was watching, obviously, and I know, I know basically what kind of goes on in search warrants and stuff. I was more on the serving the search warrant than I was writing them. And, just over the last couple of weeks with this whole thing with, President Trump, Mar-a-Lago, and all the other stuff, it's just, I've got a lot of questions. And I thought, you know what, let's just lay it out there, do a quick show, let people know what's going on. And I'm not going to get into who, what, yes, no, or whatever. I just think we should just kind of lay it out there and kind of discuss some of the things that we're going to go, that would go on in the warrant. That's all.
Yeah. Fortunate of working with Scott for so many years. And he really, like early on, really coached me through writing them. Like you, Chris, I did a lot of, SWAT stuff. You just are there for the execution of it. You're not really writing it. You understand what it's for and things like that, but you're really more about the tactics associated with it. But Scott was really good in educating me and a lot of other guys in our unit and our agency to, writing it, what you got to do and develop it. So Scott, why don't you take everybody through?
Yeah. So, you guys, again, we're all familiar with doing these from over the years and have been on the, the execution side as well as the preparation side and the investigation side, because I think that's one thing, I've been listening to all this about the execution of the search warrant and the raid and all this stuff they've been talking at Trump's house. And, again, it's one of those things when you know the business and the ins and outs of it, you have a little bit more insight into it, but you hear what they're saying about it. And I think there's just a lot of confusion about what is really done with search warrants, how they come about, and what it really takes to get a search warrant. Just one of the main things is that obviously if you're, say in this instance, because we're talking about search warrants on homes, you have to have an investigation. There has to be something that is leading up to a search warrant. You can't just walk into a state's attorney's office, walk into a judge's chambers and say, I want a search warrant for this person's house, or I want a search warrant for this person's vehicle. It's one of the most intrusive things in our legal system in order to be able to do that. And a lot of times takes a significant amount of background and preparation and investigation to even lead to, getting the okay for a search warrant. And then if you are granted a search warrant, say for a residence, what exactly are you going to be able to go in there and search for and recover? It just doesn't give you free will to break someone's door down and go and spend the next 7 hours in their house rummaging through and turning drawers upside down in their house and emptying their closets because you might be looking for one specific thing. So that's a big part of it too, is that search warrants, you're targeting specific things based on what the crime is. So just, kind of as an example, I was, looking over one that I was involved in not too long ago, and it was a money laundering investigation. And so you're talking about, like, if you're, what you're going to be doing initially is you're doing an investigation. You're doing surveillance, you're meeting with informants, you're doing a variety of different things. Now, when you feel that you've actually gotten to the point where you think you can get a search warrant for a residence, now you're talking to a state's attorney and saying, hey, this is what we've done up to this point. Now we feel that we have enough to execute a search warrant on this residence. So you're going to have to write that search warrant, and essentially you initially in that search warrant, you're going to identify who you are. You're a police officer, whatever type of law enforcement officer it is, that you are coming to the court in order to request a search warrant for residence, XYZ. And now not only do you have to provide a valid and accurate description of the home, because we've all heard these stories about how search warrants accidentally get executed at the wrong residence. So just right off the bat, you absolutely need to be sure that you've documented the specific address, that it's verified where you're going to be executing this search warrant. And then you have to list out what types of violations you're executing that search warrant for. Is it money laundering? Is it narcotics? Is it financial crimes? So it's not just a throwing out a net and taking anything that you can get. It's saying, I'm executing this search warrant because I believe the things that I'm going to recover further these criminal charges that I'm looking for, like I just listed. So you're gonna lay that out, where it is that I'm going to do this search warrant. What is it? What are the criminal offenses that I'm trying to support through executing this search warrant? And then what they call the to-wit, the legal jargon, some of the legal jargon that's in that search warrant, which essentially means, what are those things that I'm going to be searching for? So again, it has to fit whatever the crime is that you're investigating. If it's narcotics, I'm looking for evidence of narcotics. I'm looking for drugs. I'm looking for scales. I'm looking for packaging. I'm looking for possibly firearms, if you can show that there's firearms tied to that. You're searching for large amounts of currency, maybe electronics. Everything's electronics nowadays. Cell phones, tablets, laptops, identification, verifying, who lives in the house, we can prove who's there, who's involved in this case. Then you might have something, you're probably going to have something in there, again, where you're supporting what you're looking for. And we talked about this just before we got started, was safes. A lot of people keep valuable things and things related to their criminal enterprises in safes when they are within their homes. So, and you guys know this from ones that we've done before, where sometimes you'll get a judge that will say, yes, you can search for all these 5 things, but for whatever reason, not firearms. Okay. So you might find firearms, but you can't seize those firearms in that search warrant. Or we've run into, right. So maybe if he okays the safe, you could have a couple different situations. You could have the safe and any and all locked containers, or, some type of verbiage like that in the search warrant. And you're able to open that search warrant, that safe, as a factor in that search warrant. It might be locked. You might get the person who's the owner of it. You might convince them to give you the access to the code for it. You may have to break it open. Now, one of the things, I was hearing from this search warrant in Mar-a-Lago was like they had a safe cracker with them and all this. I've never heard of anything like that. I mean, I don't know what confirmation we had from that. It sounded a little TV, kind of made up kind of thing. And maybe it's embellished a little bit, but yes. Do we have tools that we can use to break safes open if we need to? Certainly. And you may or may not, that might be something that you're doing on scene, but it might also be doing something that you're taking that safe with you, and then you're going to be opening it, you're going to bring it back to your police station or your jail or whatever, and you're going to open it there. Now, one thing I also noticed that I kept hearing over and over again was, oh, they took boxes and boxes of documents, and you don't know everything that was in all of those boxes of documents. Well, correct, but they did also provide property receipts. When you're taking those things out of the house, there's going to be an inventory of what those things are that you take from the house. That might be accurate. They might have found 5 boxes of whatever that, these sensitive documents were that they were looking for. But do you have the time to sit there and thumb through all of that while you're on scene at this search warrant? No, you can't stay in this house for just an extended period of time and spend the next 24 hours going through all this stuff. You're going to seize documents that you can reasonably say would be related to this execution of this search warrant. And there may be things that you wind up turning back over at a later date. I mean, that happens with a variety of different, types of property. So I think just the way that you were hearing some of those things, I think either, it was maybe that people weren't giving 100% accurate account of what they were doing with that stuff, or just, again, not providing some explanation.
Right. Now, one of the last things I want to cover before we wrap up this quick hit here is the fact that I just read an article that the FBI allegedly took the Trumps, Donald, and whoever was there, President Trump, Melania, all of them, they took their passports. Now, I don't know whether this is true or not, and I don't want to speculate that, but let's just say that has got nothing to do with the case. And again, we didn't read the case, what they had on the whole case. We don't know any of that. Let's just say, for an argument's sake, that they took that and it has nothing to do with the case. Does that negate the case, the warrant, or what?
I would just say that you're going to have justification for why that is that you're taking that. And if you don't, you're going to have to return it. I mean, the only thing that I could think of, the only reason I could think that maybe you would be doing that is you're anticipating somebody, leaving the country or doing something along those. You're going to have to return it. Is it going to throw the whole case out? I don't think so. Unless it was just done, maliciously, intentionally. Right. Yeah, right. That could certainly have some impact on it. But if it was just done, and again, it's the feds, it might be a little bit different. Seems like an odd thing to do, but right. I don't think it's going to destroy the whole case either way.
Right. Okay. All right.
Well, as usual, please pay attention and use cooler heads and calmer heads and realize there's a lot of people out there. There's a whole industry based upon false information, and it's not just because Trump says it's fake news or somebody else on the other side says it's fake news. It's literally fake news. Like, you don't know what's going on because there's no way to possibly know this because of the investigation that's happening. And stop undermining the entire process, because what we want you to understand is that when this happens at the level that it's happening in the President of the United States, whether it's just or not, it now undermines everyone in the process. And when police officers are now trying to do this for good reason, people are now ginned up about it and will use a lot more violence against the police, will do things that some people think are justified at this point. But at the end of the day, cops are getting killed showing up to domestics without warrants. Now you're there to execute a search warrant on someone and they feel it's unjust. It can lead to a lot of bad things. So there is a process. It's best to understand it. Scott did a great job of explaining a lot of it to us.
Thanks, Sarge. Nice job, bro.
Ever wanted to ask a police officer a question? Mail your questions to 3copstalk@gmail.com. That's the number 3, copstalk@gmail.com, and we'll answer them on the show. Follow us on Instagram at 3copstalk. That's the number 3 copstalk. Thanks for listening, and stay safe out there.